And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Lakers insider for Lakers Daily, joined on this fine Tuesday evening by my favorite Kamenetzky brother, like far and away.
Trying to get my hand in the frame.
It's a TikTok thing. These vertical frames became a thing because of TikTok. But Brian is here. What we did today to help each other get through August, we will occasionally do these home and home podcasts. So I did Locked On Lakers earlier. That will air tonight. I don't know when
it'll go live at midnight. The audio goes at midnight, and the YouTube, I usually set that for around 11:30, maybe 10:45. Depends on when I get around to it.
Yeah. So that'll
be with a person
like
like you. I might put it up early just because it drives traffic.
Well, it's just kind of now that we have actually done this and can't go back and do it. Part one airing after part two is a little awkward. But you know what? We're still ironing out those wrinkles. But in part one of this home and home thing, I went on Locked On Lakers and we talked about D'Angelo Russell for like a half hour. And we talked about my theory on bringing him off of the bench and why that could or could not work, what that could or could not do. So I hope you guys check out that portion of this conversation. And then on my half of the show, we're going to do something a little different here. And we're going to try to figure out the best, while still realistic. You asked for world peace when I asked you in DMs. Not realistic, but we're going to try to have the best. well, unless you're asking for meta, I think the Lakers could get meta, if that's what you're asking for. That is realistic, but the we're going to try to figure out the best, or at least more productive offseason that the Lakers had than the Lakers had so far this summer, and while doing so with like an eye towards, is this actually at least somewhat actionable? A reminder, please do hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you get your podcasts. If you guys are watching live right now on YouTube, just like right under the window you're looking at right now is the subscribe button. Hit that one, hit the like button, and then tell your friends about the show. Tell your friends that you love the show. Tell your enemies that you hate it. And maybe they'll listen because they don't like your advice. And then if you guys are listening to this in the morning via podcast form, subscribe everywhere it is that you get your podcasts, preferably on Odyssey. And then also, while you're there, subscribe to Locked On Lakers. If you're listening to me right now, chances are you've also listened to Locked On Lakers at some point, for reasons that I can't quite understand, but from back in the day. But the show got better, in recent years, again, for reasons I can't quite understand.
Now, I'm looking forward to coming one day and improving the Lakers Lounge, but that's a time for another.
We're gonna do like a version of what D'Angelo Russell does, where he like keeps going back to.
Well, that was my favorite. My favorite of all the trade rumors last year were the ones that sent him backwards in the like back to Minnesota, but back to Brooklyn, like where we could recreate D'Lo's career in reverse, and he just goes back through all the same teams again, like. He gets traded in the same order, because like if he'd been traded to Brooklyn, then Brooklyn would have had to figure out a way to get him to Golden State. Golden State could get him to Minnesota, and then we could just repeat the cycle again. Like that would be phenomenal.
Well, I don't know if he's going to be in the league long enough to fully repeat the cycle a third time. That's a long career for D'Angelo Russell. But yeah, I think we're essentially going to, like, the Lakers so far this offseason have added Dalton Connect and Bronny James. They have lost Taurean Prince. They have lost Spencer Dinwiddie. They all of their player option guys picked up their player options. Notably, Russell did. Christian Wood did it basically right at the onset of his ability to do so. Cam Reddish eventually did it. And Jackson Hayes eventually did it. And here we find ourselves with a Lakers roster that looks far too similarly to last year. And it has led to a lot of frustration on fans' part. So what we're going to do right now is, look, Rob might be at Disneyland, might be at Disney World at this point, because you can actually get out and travel in August in the NBA calendar. So he might be at Disney World doing the real thing. And while he's out, Brian and I are going to fix the Lakers. So Brian,
leave him a note on his desk.
Wouldn't it be funny if one of the Ramby was like, "God, have you seen the ideas these guys have? Hey, Rob, wouldn't you go back? No hurry, but what
if
do you
Linda
think?
fixed what if while Rob was out taking some well-deserved, well-earned time, Linda just fixed the whole damn thing? Like she did, she found a backup center. She, an improvement at point guard. Somehow managed to, swing a trade with the Bulls that obviously wouldn't include a first-round pick because they don't want them. And just turns out that after all of these years, Linda Rambis is the best GM the Lakers had.
It's she winds up better than Jerry West. It's just, I'd be here for it.
It'd be an interesting story. Maybe traffic the next day would be fantastic.
If that is actually how it plays out, I don't think we would be able to call Rob's vacation well earned or well deserved. Because if it's Linda fixing everything, that would mean that she earned the vacation.
Wally pipped by Linda Rambis.
Where would you start though? Where would you start in this realistic, still somewhat realistic offseason that we wish the Lakers maybe could have had?
I mean, it was always going to be challenging. And it was whether Russell, and I always assumed that Russell would opt out, but that the Lakers would end up re-signing him. So from a roster availability standpoint, it's a wash. He's still taking up one of your roster spots. I don't know. I mean, I hadn't thought about it. You just start to calculate all the people on the 1 years. They put themselves in a challenging spot just based on these option years that they gave everyone. But that said, I did not think that they would be in a situation where they would have nobody new on the roster. I figured, you find a way to swing a trade, to do something. And they are trades that I think fans underrate in terms of their pain. The Lakers don't have 14 extra second round picks. So using one to get rid of Cam Reddish actually does kind of hurt. All of these little cuts that you take away from your draft capital, and, you can't trade things twice. And so if you need 2 or 3 extra things down the road that you had to use it to undo your bad choices around guys like Cam Reddish, that kind of sucks. So I could see why they don't want to do it. But that said, I thought they would. And once that happened, it's well, where do you go? You asked me what I would have wanted. In a perfect world, you get a stretch big with a little bit of heft behind him that can play next to Anthony Davis. That to me is a guy who can play center. And Kelly Olynyk would have been that's a good example. He's a credible center. He's not somebody who's going to fix your defense. He's not, but he can play next to Anthony Davis. He can play by himself. And he's a real live NBA center with some virtue. Somebody like that, or a defensive version of that. I mean, for what the Lakers had, you're not going to get Miles Turner or a two-way player or something like that. But somebody who could fill the need of playing next to Anthony Davis and providing a credible 5, so he can play a little bit of 4, 5, however you want to divide it up. But also being somebody like Jackson Hayes, you don't love when he's out there kind of by himself. He's suboptimal in some ways, as much as hard as he works.
He's an adventure. No matter, it's really rare that you're that was a nice, steady Jackson Hayes stint. It's always oh my God, the house is on fire, or holy crap, look at Jackson Hayes go. Look at him go. The house is
on fire, or the house is on fire. Either way,
Jackson Hayes on fire.
Yes. They need better back. I mean, their best option here is still, in terms of that pairing, the versatility for a legitimate center to play with Anthony Davis is still Christian Wood. It's not Hayes. I mean, that's not a great combination, those two guys together. But Wood still, just as it was last year, makes some sense next to Davis. He had some rebounding moments last year. Of all the things with Redick that kind of interest me and excite me this year about like low key things, we never got to this. It was on the agenda. We got so deep into D'Lo talk that it ate up 30 minutes in a heartbeat. But like, where can internal improvement come from? And I think it's natural to look at Austin Reeves. I know that's something you've been doing on your show, and how a different role might help elevate him and how much better he needs to be, which I 100% agree with you. He needs to ascend to, I don't think he's ever been an all-star, but that guy that you can be like, you can put your Homer glasses on and be like, here's why I think Austin Reeves is an all-star. And you're wrong, but you're not so wrong that the argument is it's completely ridiculous. It is enough element of it.
At least Lakers fans are saying like, see, this guy gets it. Whereas like, if I was to make the case for Austin to be to be an all-star right now, even Lakers fans would be like, shut up.
Right.
Like,
we need to do better than that
right now.
He needs to at least fool Lakers fans to like, and because that's an improvement. And like, we all know we're just kind of engaging in some homerism, but you're not totally ridiculous. So like that's step one. We all look at Max Christie, rightly so, and now at $8 million a year, he's actually going to play. We all wish he'd played last year, but Redick is certainly good. They are not going to sit him down the same way that they did last year. But I think low key, one of the best avenues for improvement is to find a way to get something out of Christian Wood. And some of that is health, but some of that is comfort and role and consistency. And these are the types of things that you hope JJ Redick, as a more sophisticated offensive mind, I guess, than Darvin, is able to figure out. Hopefully. So I mean, that is a place where, cross your fingers, maybe they can figure, a way to make it work. But that's first and foremost, I think, is what they needed more than an upgraded point guard. And then after that would have been a wing. But like this summer, like what happened? Like who are we talking about? Even Valanciunas, not a great fit.
Yeah. Well, like the market was bad. I think the market is just going to be bad from here on out. Like, I think free agency is kind of drying up before our eyes because of this new CBA. I said it on your show. Agents, a lot of them felt super awkward with their clients because their clients wanted to opt out and get an extra year on their contract or opt out. And like Gary Trent Jr. thought he was getting a $25 million offer. He's a veteran minimum player right now. And so
did he sign with the Lakers?
Man. Oh, all right. Here's a question I would like to ask you, because with Gary Trent Jr., with Tyus Jones, and with Klay Thompson, a legitimate speed bump that the Lakers kept on. It could have been a speed bump. It could have been a roadblock. It became a roadblock. Was that they did not want to promise any kind of a role. That isn't to say that like Klay Thompson definitely wasn't going to start, but they wanted JJ Redick to have the flexibility to not start him if it looked like JJ Redick, as he looked last year, is washed. So would you have been so dogmatic in that stance as the Lakers were? Because I think that really kind of boxed the Lakers in a little bit in an offseason where they needed talent.
For the role that they had available, and the money that they were reportedly willing to offer Klay. I mean, I'm not sure if they really were going to go up to $20 million a year, but like for $20 million a year, but that, like, if you're going to go up to $80 million for Klay Thompson, I mean, you don't get a vote. Like, I mean, it's paying Klay Thompson $20 million a year for the next 4 years is a terrible idea. I love Klay. That's a terrible idea. And so
$20 million next year might be a terrible idea, let alone for half a decade later. Yeah.
That is too much. Klay Thompson. Again, love Klay, love the shooting. I do think on a team, at least you get a year bump of a highly motivated Klay. But like, He's not the defender he used to be when you were really paying for a true 3-and-D guy. He's just not that kind of defender anymore. He's never been a great passer. He's not terrible, but he's not great. And he doesn't rebound. So it's like, what do we, 4 years, $80 million? No. So in that sense, I was worried that they would do the stupid thing. In that case, I don't care what they promised him. I don't want them to, I want him to say no, so he goes somewhere else. I want him to be offended. So I would not have promised Clay a role like that. I don't know how you can promise Trent that role. Because with Gary Trent, and this is where I think the Lakers ran into some problems. With Gary Trent, they have to, that you are, I think, can you play him at the 3? Like I guess it depends on what you're going to do with him, like where you're going to start him, what your lineup configurations are going to be, and all that kind of stuff. It's too complicated, I think, to try to offer him the same kind of role that he ended up being able to get to for himself in Milwaukee with the Lakers. Like when you're Trent, even if they can promise him a starting role, he's going to have to compete for minutes with so many more people. Whereas with the Bucks, he just walks in and is like, okay, go do the Malik Beasley role from last year, which was a better 27-minute role that they had. Do it better than Beasley did, even. But like you have a 100, like this is easy to see. It's easy to see your path. It's much harder to see it with the Lakers because you have to figure out, Connect's going to play, and you just paid Max Christie. You have Austin Reeves, and you still have D'Angelo Russell. And so if you're a 2-3 like Trent, like I look at that and I was like, it's too crowded. I'd rather go play with Milwaukee. So you can promise me whatever you want. I know my role is going to be bigger over there. Tyus Jones is the same way. And so, there is just no credible way that while Russell is on the team, you can promise, even if you have a roster spot, that you can promise Tyus Jones the kind of role that he's going to get with the Suns. And so they ran into not just roster spot problems, but fit problems too. Their roster is so weird because it's simultaneously too deep and not nearly deep enough. Deep enough to be a problem, but not deep enough that it actually solves problems.
There would have been there are 4 players that, like, Pete said this. He was like, there are 4 players at the end of the roster I would prefer not see play a basketball game in the NBA next year, right? Jalen Trofino is probably in that group. Bronny James is probably in that group. Maxwell Lewis is in that group. And I'm forgetting another one. I'm
personally putting Cam Reddish in that group. But
I think Cam is probably in that group.
I get a lot of flack for being down on Cam Reddish. I just don't think he's very good.
A comment here we get here from Court King's Chris is, at least D-Ham is gone. So I think this is an interesting part of this whole perfect, constructing the perfect offseason. Is JJ Redick a part of your perfect offseason, given the options that we know that the Lakers had?
No. But so I was I would have, and I have no idea which of these guys is better than the other. Like none of us know. Like you have to see them coach.
There's no way to know with JJ.
And there's no way to know with JJ. There's no way to know with Mike and Nori. There's no way to know with David Adelman. There's no, you don't know. Like you can guess, but you don't know. I was much more on the let's do somebody like Adelman path than I was somebody like Redick, because I feel like you get kind of the best of both worlds, where Adelman is obviously a very well regarded, very intelligent assistant. But he's been around winning programs. He's done all this stuff. He's got some experience that he can watch and do that's different than JJ's experience of watching coaches from the perspective of a player. Like Adelman has been in these meetings. He's been part of drawing up game plans. He's got more experience. He is also somebody who is a bit of a blank slate that, seems like a novel thinker, seems like somebody who is not going to be, sort of the cookie cutter type guy but I don't know. I like that. But I mean, Mike Nori and Adelman at the very least didn't get hired by other teams, probably because they didn't love the options that were out there. But, it's not like nobody else made David Adelman you must take this offer kind of deal either. So I don't know, but no, I am optimistic about Redick. I think if anybody can be good coming in the path that he's taking, it's somebody like him who has obviously a very sophisticated basketball mind that is, forget impressed Rob and Jeannie, it impressed LeBron. And LeBron is
the big one.
Yeah.
LeBron's
and I don't mean like
really
he's friends with LeBron. Like LeBron does not suffer fools when it comes to basketball IQ. And you can tell just watching those shows, you can tell LeBron has a tremendous amount of respect for the way that Redick looks at basketball. So I'm optimistic about that. I'm optimistic that he is flexible enough in his thinking that he will look at data, but also can understand people. I thought the Coach K argument of he's a guy who can understand role players, he can understand veteran players, he understands what it's like to be a star because that's what he was at Duke. I think there's a lot of validity to all that. My only question is, can he be good enough, fast enough to help the Lakers like now? Like the Lakers need a 3-game boost from their coach now.
With the same roster.
Like with the same roster, they need their coach to make them 3 or 4 games better now. And that is a tall order for any rookie coach. So that's where my skepticism comes. But that said, none of the guys I wanted to hire had head coaching experience. So that's kind of where I am on JJ. So he's not part of my perfect offseason, but he didn't ruin it for me.
You didn't mention Hurley there. Where would he have figured into that analysis?
What I liked about Hurley is, I mean, both guys, let's be honest, both guys are Lakers style, star effery. Like, JJ Redick was not the most prominent name in terms of accomplishments for coaching. He was the sexiest name. He was the biggest star on the market. He was like, the highest profile. And I don't think there's any question about that. So the Lakers did sort of get into their, star thing that they didn't. And Hurley does that too. I like the idea of Dan Hurley because I think you are committed. Like if you hire that guy, like he's going to be here, he's going to have sway, he's going to build a program, he's going to do all that stuff. He's a very forward-thinking college coach. He's not like it's like the days in the 90s and stuff where you hire these guys who were used to having an ironclad hold on their program, but actually aren't the most inventive coaches. Like I think Hurley has that control, but is also a very creative coach. So I was cool. I hadn't thought about it until the Lakers apparently decided to. Like, hey, before we hire Redick, you guys want to call Dan Hurley? What do you think?
It's one of the weirdest weekends my time covering this was because everything to that point had indicated that the Lakers were zeroed in on Redick, didn't love that he was making them wait, or ESPN was making him make them wait until after the finals, which was like, what I didn't understand about all that is like, okay, you can accept the job and still call. Mark Jackson did that. Like Mark Jackson accepted the Golden State gig, still called games, still called and had conversations that he needed to have with Golden State. That was, the precedent was set there. It was super weird that everybody involved was like, no, you can only do one right now, even though we are 4 months away from the season.
It's not like the Lakers were advancing. It's one thing if the Lakers are still in the playoff. Like JJ Redick is calling the games for the team he's about to coach. Okay, that's weird. I could see where you can be like, this damages our product. But that's not a thing. That wasn't the
looking
worry.
At Darvin. Hey, play Rui more. It's what I'm gonna do. Can we get him some more minutes?
Man, this is why this guy really needs to be really should have been fired. I don't even know what that looks like. Like they're still in it, but they're gonna fire him. But obviously then he's still the coach. that didn't make sense, but I think people understand what I was getting at. Like, there was no real reason for Redick to not be able to accept the job with the Lakers and still finish his time with ESPN. Like, the man can walk and chew gum. It would have been fine.
And like part of why the whole Hurley thing happened was because the Lakers were really frustrated by that situation. And they were like,
went right back to it as if nothing ever happened. That was the part that I thought was strange. It's like, everybody was like, okay, well, and I get Redick be like, look, I mean, you want to go hire Dan Hurley? Okay, fine. I understand, arguably one of the 2 or 3 best coaches, depending on how you regard him, 5 best coaches, working in this country. Like, okay, I get that. But like, but it wasn't like we're going to open it up to Alleman or Nori or whatever. It's just like, okay, this didn't work, and now we're just going to like wormhole this thing or memory hole it and pretend it never happened. That part.
Well, and then it also wasn't immediate. Like, all right, you didn't get Hurley. We're going to wait another couple of weeks to get Redick again, without again figuring like without talking more to Nori and without talking. And they kept on telling us who's the guy whose name I'm blanking on, who was going to be the coach at Cleveland until their owner told him that like he wanted the other guy instead.
Oh, Kenny Atkinson ended up in Cleveland.
No. Atkinson got the job, but
right.
Rosat, no. Oh my gosh, why am I blanking? He's in New Orleans.
Oh, what's his name? Yeah,
James Borrego. Thank you, Tam. Yeah. We kept on hearing is like, well, but they sure are taking Borrego seriously. And the whole reason we kept on getting that was because Borrego was the guy that AD liked more than everybody else. So it was like, we're really, really thinking long and hard about James Borrego. No, Borrego. No, you're not getting another interview. It was just
like you're trying to. I mean, no disrespect to James Borrego, who is, I'm sure, an outstanding coach and
such a funny sentence to hear out loud. No disrespect.
I mean, because look, this is something that I don't know if we have time to get me. It's August. We probably do. I understand, like, Golden State fans don't like Steve Kerr. I get that. Like, okay, he's overrated. He's a bad coach, bad game manager.
Americans didn't like Steve Kerr.
But here's the thing about it. Like, I defer to like that it wasn't just Steve Kerr on that staff. Like, you have Eric Spoelstra whispering in his ear, and Mark Few and Ty. Like, there's some. If he was doing stuff like really stupid, like genuinely, just what the are you doing? Like, you don't think Eric Spoelstra and these guys would kind of tap him on the shoulder and be like, Steve? Like, I am just generally more.
They walk away from that. I was like, this is not me. This is this guy.
Like, you look there and like Spoelstra's in the 8th row. People got so mad. What is Steve Kerr is such an idiot. Like, you're gonna leave Jason Tatum on your bench. They're mad when he doesn't play.
Yeah,
and he plays. Well, what the bleep are you playing Jason Tatum?
You look terrible.
You look terrible. It's like complaining about rotations to me is like one of the, like, unless you are one of these guys who really understands, like deeply understands strategy and the downstream impacts of, like, I saw people complaining about LeBron guarding Jokic when Embiid was on the floor. I was like, all right, that was odd. I mean, I get it, but then I saw an explanation that made this explanation, by the way, could have been totally wrong. But the point is, like, there's reasons. They said so. And the explanation I saw was, well, when you have Embiid not on Jokic, it lets him hedge higher on the floor and do all this stuff, and he'd be more disruptive and all these. And it's like, okay, again, is that correct? I don't know, but the point is,
if you're going to do that, you play AD instead. But yeah,
maybe. But the point is, these guys know much more about basketball and the ripple effects of everything that's happening, and why player A and player B don't work together as well as you would like, or maybe this, or maybe other, the strengths, and the politics that are involved. And there are always going to be politics in these situations, much more than I do. And so I am probably more deferential to coaches than maybe other people are. I don't think Darvin did a very good job last year, but I was still probably nicer to him on a day-to-day basis than a lot of Lakers fans were. I don't know what brought that up. Do you remember the question that
we were just asking about like Hurley and like whether JJ would be a part of the perfect offseason that we're trying to build.
I mean, so no, but I didn't. I mean, there weren't a billion. There was no option where you look at it and you go, "Oh, I said no disrespect to James Borrego."
Which is again,
like you don't leverage James Borrego. Like we're gonna dangle out. Wow, we might hire James Borrego if you're not careful. Really? Okay,
we'll do it.
All right.
We'll do it.
But like, so I mean, there was no candidate out there where you look at it and say you would have to be stupid not to hire this guy. And to be perfectly honest, the last couple times the Lakers have made those big moves, most people thought Darvin Ham was a really good idea. Very well regarded assistant coach.
LeBron thought so.
Yes, he had overall a good first year. It remains to be seen whether he could have had a good third year. And I do think he will get another head coaching opportunity and could do very well. Luke Walton seemed like they fired Byron quickly to make sure they could get Luke. Like I asked Mitch that question, like, did you do this? Was the timetable to make sure you could? Yes. And everyone's like, Luke Walton, genius young coach.
Yeah.
Didn't work. So I don't know. We don't know anything about these things. And I don't think they know it. It's like it's a dart throw half the time. So
I agree. So, we've talked about free agency and the Lakers not being able to do anything in free agency. They had had they done enough, they could have technically had access to a taxpayer mid-level exception that they wound up not using. And then
who would you use it on though?
Well, that was the thing that I did some asking around and I wasn't able to get like a definitive answer, but like with a Tyus Jones or with a Gary Trent Jr., would those guys have accepted not starting or not having a starting spot promised to them if the Lakers had offered them the taxpayer mid-level, which is about double what they got, right? Just I think it's shade under double of what they got, double the veteran minimum contract. I'm told that the Lakers didn't offer the taxpayer mid-level to either of those guys. And that it was pretty much like you're not going to start and you're not and you're getting the veteran minimum. Rob, like you said earlier, the Rob did not want to just attach draft capital to get off of contracts. That was his stance dating back to Russ, in that, like, for a while we thought that if the Lakers were going to, or we were told by way of reporting that, like, if the Lakers were going to get off of Russell Westbrook, it was going to cost a separate first rounder plus another first rounder if you wanted to bring in any like tangible help as part of that deal. Now
nothing like giving up draft capital for a guy and then having to use it to get rid of him.
Yeah. So, so anyway, long story short there, they wind up not doing anything in free agency. And the last kind of domain here that we talked about plenty on your show, so we don't have to go too deep into it. But like, I think the starting point to this very constipated offseason was not having something lined up as soon as D'Angelo Russell opts in. That like, the people that I've spoken to around the league, a lot of people were kind of surprised that D'Lo opts in and the Lakers didn't have something actionable that day or the day after. That it almost like took the Lakers by surprise that he opted in. And I think that's fair criticism. I think that sometimes league-wide criticism of the Lakers goes a little far. That one, I think I tend to agree. That one is where, how do you not take advantage of that gift?
Yeah. Here's what I always want to know. And because I'm not here to try to defend Rob. What I always want to know is, what did they say no to?
Yeah.
Like, what is there that they said no to? And that's always I think the challenge, the really challenging thing to figure out. Like, it's one thing to say you should have had something like if you're willing to give up enough stuff, you're willing to attach enough things to D'Lo, you can do it. But that doesn't make it a good idea. And they have they have one swing. If you want to make for like a big player, the type of guy where you need 2 first-round picks and an Austin Reeves and Adult Connect, like you got one shot at it.
Mm-hmm.
Or even for little things, like you can only do a couple little moves that require picks because you don't have very many. Just using them to get rid of D'Lo because like you'd like to be moving on. He's too good for that. Like it's not like Grant Williams where like we need to get him out of here now. And like we hate him. Like we hate him. Like everyone here hates him. And he's not really that important to what we're doing, given what we're going to replace him with. So like D'Lo's not that. And so there is a point where you just like, this is stupid. We can't give up this much to get rid of this guy who's a pretty good player.
It's not a Russell Westbrook situation.
No. And so I would love to know what they said no to. Like, I would love to know what they said no to with Russ. Like, what were the final things that they were like, when you got the Buddy Hield and Miles Turner thing, ready to go. And, a couple times, I guess, where you're just like, no, I think we can do better. Like, what were these things? What did it look like at the trade deadline when players, they couldn't make a move or wouldn't make a move? That's the kind of stuff. Like, so I'm both frustrated, but also I'm less frustrated by how things happened this year and this offseason than I am by, again, the sort of just series of mistakes, some small, some big, that put them in this box to begin with.
So, I mean, I don't.
Long answer.
I'm going to go into as much detail as I can, seeing as we're up against the end of the show too. But and we have your favorite. We have super comments lined up, so that we have to answer here at the end of the show. But I
feel like you should be like an auctioneer with those things.
You know what? Like, I'm with you. It blows me away that people are willing to support the show in that way, and I greatly awesome. Appreciate it. But
congratulations.
But so it's all right. So the Lakers could have had Kuz for whatever contracts, whether it's D'Lo, whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm only going to focus on the draft capital because that's honestly the part of it that like matters to people. So Kuz would have gone for a first and a couple seconds. That there was some thought that the Lakers could have been able to bring him in without having to give up 2 firsts for Kyle Kuzma.
Right.
Dorian Finney-Smith.
You got to make the numbers work. So at least one rotation player is leaving.
Yeah.
At least
so
one,
whether it's Kuz or whether it's D'Lo or whether it's Rui or whether it's Vando, that's what the Lakers could have done to bring in Kuz. Dorian Finney-Smith, the Nets would have preferred to get a first for him, but sentiment around the league is that like he's probably going to go for less than a first at the deadline because he has another year on top of this year on that contract. It's not an expiring. So the Lakers, again, whatever role player, in this case, it would have probably been D'Lo going back to Brooklyn. So it would have been D'Lo in a couple seconds for Dorian Finney-Smith. That's one I probably would have done. Like that's one that I probably would have done. Especially seeing as, eventually later in the offseason, you could have replaced some of that point guard production with Tyus Jones, on the minimum.
In theory.
Eventually you would, right? That's where we have hindsight helps us there.
Right. I mean, you don't know that. I think you certainly can't go into the offseason saying, we can probably get Tyus Jones on a minimum. Like, that's not realistic.
Yeah. Jeremy Grant would be a Laker right now if the Lakers were interested in giving up 2 firsts for him. I personally wouldn't do that.
Terrible idea.
Again, the sense is that eventually that price is going to drop, but like Joe Cronin is also like not the kind of guy who drops prices. So he might just like Jeremy Grant just might be a Portland Trailblazer for the entirety of the year again. Wendell Carter Jr. would be a Laker right now if the Lakers were interested in giving 2 firsts for him. That one's tough. That one's kind of tough because giving up 2 first rounders for ostensibly a backup center, even though he's better than all backup centers, is tough.
That is a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot. I
So
mean,
you wouldn't do that one.
And I don't think. How much does Carter make?
I think he just got a newish deal.
Yeah, I'm trying to, because like this matters. Like it's not a question because it's part of where the Lakers are stuck is because, you know, for more expensive players, especially, like you have to trade 14. So
yeah, 4-year, $50 million deal.
Yeah, so he's going to get 13, a little more than 13. So you could do that for Gabe. You could do it for D'Lo. And so you're giving up pieces of your rotation. If they had players that they didn't need, the higher prices could, because then all you're doing is adding talent and adding to your rotation. So like in the case of Kuz, it's not just Kuz and the first round pick. Like, is he worth a first round pick? Is the difference between Kuzma and Rui, put a name out there, is the difference between those two guys enough to make up for the first round pick and all that other stuff? Like, are you getting that much better going from Kyle Kuzma to Rui Hachimura? I don't know. Like, what do you think?
So
Rui's a better shooter. Rui's a better floor spacer.
In the case of Kuz, I do think, because it's only for the one first rounder, first in a couple seconds, like I do think that production step up. Like I know what I'm going to get from Kuz
for sure
in the playoffs, and I like that. I
don't know if you do. Role players, Kuz had, you know what you got from him in 2020, but he hasn't been in the playoffs since then, has he?
Well,
but like, so but my point is,
because the Warriors or the Wizards are the Wizards.
They're terrible. They're god awful. That's not, and I'm not blaming. It's not Kyle Kuzma's fault he hasn't been to the playoffs. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Playoff Rui. Well, you know what you're getting from Rui Hachimura in the playoffs. You just showed us this year, who was terrible. You know, some of that's matchup. He was matchup against the Nuggets. I mean, like, it is really hard to hold a standard. I mean, I understand, like, you know, there is a fall off with Russell where it's too easy to scheme against him in the postseason. It's not that he can't play a couple good games against Denver, but he's just got real shortcomings that with the rest of the roster, they can't protect. I think it is a real mistake to ascribe consistency in the postseason to role players who, generally speaking, aren't. Even Gabe Vincent, who everybody loved coming out. Like, if you look at the full totality of that run that he had in December, it was all over the freaking map. Like, he had a great series against Boston, but it was all over the place.
His career,
before that, he was bad in the playoffs.
3-point shooter,
right. And before that, he was bad. So it's like, I just don't think. I think that's a mistake to say. I don't know what I'm going to get from Paul George in the playoffs, let alone Kyle Kuzma. There are 2 or 3 role players that you can let. I know what I'm getting from Andre Iguodala in the playoffs, but other than that, I don't think there are 10 guys that you can name that are definitely below that All NBA tier. You know, near All-Star, and Kuz is not a near All-Star player. He's just a good player. I don't think there are 10 guys in the league that you can say, I know exactly. I actually do know what I'm going to get from that guy in the playoffs.
Yep. All right. I guess to put a bow on this kind of subject before we move on to the starred comments here. I think the point of the exercise is to basically show that, like, without overpaying, it's really difficult to have a significantly better offseason than the Lakers had.
Yes.
That's tough. You know, it's a tough spot to be in. And
that is, to be clear, that is not a thing to protect Rob from criticism, because the reason they have to overpay is because of the construction of the roster. And so, you know, it's because you've not managed your contracts in a way that makes sense. You've not, you've made these sort of mistakes along the way. And, you know, you also traded for Russell Westbrook. Like, I realize it's can seem one note to constantly harp on that one thing, but that was such a massive and egregious mistake that it is taking them years to recover.
Well, if one note in a concert makes the entire audience deaf, you kind of have to keep bringing up the one note.
Right.
All right, let's really quickly get to these starred comments here, which means I also get to play. Oh, I think this is the first time I'm playing this with a Kamenetzky brother on the show. So let's knock out the important part of the show right here. And we will go into the super comments here, starting with Court Kings Chris. Q for both of you. Are Lakers fans putting too much pressure on Pelinka and not enough across the front office that ran by the Buss family and Tim Harris? I
don't expect Tim Harris to be swinging trades. That's not his job. I liked him a lot. That's not his job.
I do think, though, eventually, like the inability to execute stuff does reflect poorly on leadership at the top. Right?
Yes,
like
it's Genie's fault that they do not have a weightier and meatier basketball operation.
Yeah,
that is the fault of Jeanie Buss.
I was blown away that Pete was willing to say that on the show the other day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I was blown away that he was willing to put it that bluntly, that, you know, frankly, it's a thing across the entire organization, and the front office is no different.
It is too lean. The whole thing is too lean. Everything about the organization is too lean.
Yep. All right. Karl Marx. Just interesting that Karl Marx would have a
I like that the last guy was willing to go up to $5. This guy is he's like, I'm not going there. $4.99. That's my max.
I do like. I think it's kind of interesting. All right, so Lakers should consider bringing in LiAngelo Ball, solves all of our roster problems. Maybe even Julian Newman as a backup point guard. The issue with LiAngelo Ball is
this person being serious.
Yeah, the problem with LiAngelo Ball is like he literally ran over a fan with his car. That was a thing.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, like ran over a dude's foot, broke this dude's foot by running him over. And
LiAngelo Ball hasn't.
He also doesn't play.
He's like what is he? Is he even like playing basketball anywhere right now?
LiAngelo? Oh wait, no. Oh, that one. Oh shit! I was thinking LaMelo.
Right. No, you're talking about the good one. Like
LaMelo's a good
ball.
Yeah, LiAngelo
problematic
Ball,
as LaMelo might be. Like, I mean, like, yeah, sure, LaMelo. Okay, I take.
He was the one who ran over the person with the foot. I was thinking people would be interested in the one.
That's why I thought that it was a joke.
Yeah,
and also I don't. And to be fair, I do not know who Julian Newman is, so I am all on. I'm like, okay. Well, I'm not sure he solved all of our roster problems, but I'm willing to give him a training camp invite.
My guess is that Karl Marx swapped LiAngelo for
LaMelo, because I am
Lonzo
really willing to tell you that LiAngelo does not solve all of our roster problems. I don't think he solves any of them, to be honest with you.
There was like legitimate concern he was going to be allowed back from China.
Much better than me.
Yeah. All right, Mitch. Do you want to read this in Mitch voice? Do you want to do that?
I can. Hey guys.
All right.
Say what you want about me and Jim. At least we were able to sign players on day one of free agency. Shout out to Mozgov and Deng. You've heard Andy's theory about this, right? That Mitch butt dialed or accidentally dialed Mozgov at midnight, and it was just too polite to be like, I'm sorry, it was an accident. So I just negotiated a deal with him.
I will never forget. I was in Lake Havasu on the first morning of free agency. I was on a boat fishing, and I just dove into the lake. I literally just fell into the lake and tried to see how long I could hold my breath because I was so angry. I was like, what?
It's not what I would have done. It's not as egregious as it's not that it's like, because Mozgov was not a bad player, is coming off a good, but like first phone call, that's a lot of money. It wasn't well executed.
It's
it's not how
I mean, at least look, the South Sudanese Olympic team benefited from that.
It's true.
That day. All right, last one here comes from Tyler McPherson. I would do Vincent, JHS, and a first for Dorian Finney-Smith now. That means you're essentially giving up two. I mean, JHS isn't a first rounder anymore at this point.
No, but he is. The Lakers should treat him like one. I mean, again, I think it's too early to call him a bust. He's, is he going to be as good as Podziemski? Is he going to be good as Jaquez? Probably, maybe. I don't know.
Probably not.
Probably not. Definitely not. I think Podziemski is going to be very good. I think Jaquez is probably closer to his ceiling as an NBA player, which makes him he's going to play for 15 years. But I just think it's too early to call JHS a bust. Those guys are definitely ahead of him in terms of being able to help your team now. But even you can't just dump him. Like, he was pretty productive in the G League when he got a chance to play, when he's finally healthy. They don't have enough picks. They don't have enough access to young talent. Just be like, it's not a big deal to give up on last year's first round pick because you want Dorian Finney-Smith. He's a good player, but like, I mean, again, I know you hate this game, but like, are you one Dorian Finney-Smith away from a deep playoff run?
Well, no.
And then what do you do with the other? And then if you can get the other pick and something else, turn that into something else. Now you maybe, but like,
I mean, that follows the point that I made on your show, right? Once you trade one first round pick, nobody can keep asking you for 2 first round picks.
That's true.
Unless you're considering Dalton.
And I actually think there's a certain NBA logic to that, where it'd be like, all right, well, we can't get 2. We'll just take 1 now. Like that. Yeah. It sounds like you're making a joke, but you're really not. Like there is a lot of truth to that. And I think it's a really clever framing that I hadn't really thought about. So I want to credit you.
All right. I have taken up too much of your time here between your show and my show. Brian, this has been a blast. I appreciate you reaching out to me and thinking of this, because it is August.
And we'll do it again in September.
I'll talk to you next week. Please make sure you check out part 1 of our conversation on the Locked On Lakers page, whether that's on YouTube or wherever it is that you get your podcasts. And then if you've missed any of this, hit the subscribe button so that you never miss any podcasts ever again. And you are able to go back and check out the beginning of the show, or you listen to it in the podcast form tomorrow. We do have one more kind of fun episode coming for you later this week. So until then, have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you then.